This article is the 16th in a series focusing on vendors who are selling their wares at the Western New York Welcome Center's Taste New York Market. Thank you to Raema Rotindo, owner-operator of Rockerbox Spice Company, for joining in an online Zoom interview to share the Rockerbox Spice Company story, along with some business and marketing experiences, tips, and strategies. Spotlight on Rockerbox Spice Company.
My name's Raema, and Rockerbox started because of my obsession with my dehydrator. And I experimented with just throwing a few cloves of garlic into the dehydrator one day on a whim to try to make a garlic powder that was actually really good. Because I've always been someone that is had this infatuation with all different foods and trying new foods, but was continually disappointed at the quality of granulated spices that I was encountering, particularly allium powders, garlic and onions. So that might have come from my family's background in garlic. I grew up with the benefit of my grandpa's really potent hardneck New York State garlic. He was a farmer in Webster. And so I was used to garlic having this really potent, almost aggressive, amazing taste, and garlic powder just always disappointed. So I tried making my own on my terrace in a Queens apartment, and it turned out amazing. It was flavorful beyond belief. I'd never had a garlic powder like that before, and I was hooked. And I went from just a few cloves to filling my dehydrator with chopped garlic and grinding it up in my apartment and giving it away to family and friends. And I did that for a few years, attending food swaps and just gifting it away. And eventually, I ended up moving up to the Hudson Valley, and with the encouragement of enough family and friends to try to sell the stuff, I went to my first farmers market in Millbrook, New York, and the rest is history. The people of Millbrook were incredibly supportive and loved it, and I branched out from there to surrounding towns and festivals and events, and it's grown slowly and organically since then. And that was almost 10 years ago. This July will be my 10-year Rockerbox business anniversary.
And you've moved that around as you've moved yourself around.
Yeah.
To your new location, which is where?
Now I'm in Schoharie, New York, which is about 40 minutes west of Albany. For a time, I was also based in Poughkeepsie. So I've gradually moved with Rockerbox as I meander my way upstate. And my personal dehydrator was amazing, and I still use it all the time. It's actually running downstairs right now. But it didn't take long for me to, once I was selling it and doing markets and, developing my own packaging and trying to get it into stores, the shift from me dehydrating it myself to contracting someone to help me with dehydration happened pretty early on, because the dehydration of a single batch takes about 4 days. And for 100 pounds of garlic, I would get just 10 pounds of powder. That's how concentrated it is. So because it's so laborious and time consuming, that was one of the very first things that I got help with, which is why I'm able to create the quantities that I need to get it into shops throughout the Northeast now, and to attend all different kinds of markets and still have time to grow my business.
So you've expanded your product line from your early dehydrated garlic to what products now?
Well, as you just mentioned, my flagship product was the garlic dust, and this is what it looks like. This is the roasted garlic dust. It's a very concentrated powder that's kind of the consistency of flour. Every spice I make comes in 2 sizes. So this was number 1, and it was alongside garlic flakes, because when I made it and dehydrated it, I could never get it to grind down completely to a powder. So I would sift it, and I separated them into powder and flakes. which is why I still to this day have a minced flake variety and a very finely ground one. And then a few years back, I branched out into pickled products. So I started making pickled garlic, which you can eat right out of the jar, which is actually how most of my customers enjoy it. Or you can do what I like to do, which is just slice it up and throw it on a burger or a pulled pork sandwich or in a salad. You think of it like an olive, basically. It'll go great on a charcuterie board. Anywhere that an olive would be tasty, pickled garlic is even tastier. And from there, I recently launched a few different varieties of pepper pickled garlics. I've got habanero, which is hotter than I can handle, and jalapeno, which is probably my best-selling pickled garlic after the original.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, I've learned that my customers have a greater tolerance for heat than I do. And after the flagship garlic powders, I branched out into onion powders almost immediately after. I think I was in my second year of business, and so I've got 3 kinds of onion powder: shallot powder or shallot flakes, which is my most popular. And that one's sweet and subtle and pleasantly oniony. There's the yellow onion, which looks like that. And that one's the most classic, robust, onion flavored of the onion trio. And green onion, which is actually really mild, really tasty, makes a beautiful garnish. And so these 3 onion powders together, I mean, as you can see just from their color and their variety, they're nothing like a store-bought granular onion powder, which is, it always kind of amazed me before I got into this, before I started Rockerbox, was when I go to buy onion powder at the store, why is it just a generic onion? Why don't they tell me what kind of onion this is? I learned through my research that typically they're white onion, which is a very aggressive onion flavor, which is why they use it, because what ends up happening when you make onion or garlic powder commercially is that peels and roots and all of that gets mixed in, as do preservatives and additives to keep them that kind of sandy texture. So they have to use a really aggressive onion to make those powders. But when it's just a single ingredient from peeled onions, you can have a lot more nuance in flavor. And I branched out into spice blends as well. And I am not a chef. I'm a home cook. You'll never hear me pretend to understand all of the intricacies of developing spice blends. I did it just by taste and intuition and with the help of lots of taste testing family and friends. And I've kept my line of spice blends really small. There's 8 of them. And there have been more over the years, and the ones that are less popular, I've just discontinued. And these 8 are my standbys that are, each and every one of them is an all-purpose spice blend for a million different purposes that just make home cooking that much more accessible.
Raema, maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of your products in particular and maybe a little bit of sourcing of raw materials.
Sure. So one of the most unique things about my powders and my pickled garlic is that I go to great lengths to make sure that they're made with USA grown garlic. The reason for that is that USA garlic is just so incredibly flavorful, and also as the granddaughter and great granddaughter of garlic farmers, I take a lot of pride in supporting garlic farmers in the US. So you'll see on the jar, it says made with USA garlic, primarily from California. And that's pretty special. When you buy garlic powder in the store, it's nearly impossible to find powders made with anything apart from Chinese garlic, unless you're going directly to a garlic festival and buying powder from a farmer. It is made with Chinese garlic, no question. proof is in the pudding.
And on your labeling.
Yeah. And that's something I've always made a point of doing. That's not something I'm willing to compromise on.
And of course, that does influence your price point a little bit.
It does, yeah. When you make powders with Chinese garlic, they're much more affordable. You'll end up spending maybe $1.50 on a whole container, but the flavor is not there. I encourage my customers all the time to try a powder that's pure garlic made with USA product with one that's impure, full of additives, and made with garlic from overseas. And just taste the difference for yourself. I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but when you try it, you'll understand immediately. But the reason I use garlic from California as opposed to hyper local is that if I were to use New York State garlic exclusively in my powders, each jar would be upwards of $20. And as someone who's, not made of money, I want to be able to afford fancy foods. I want to walk into a store and have a little jar of garlic powder be affordable. And so that's been one of my primary motivations, is striking that balance between using ingredients that I can get behind and keeping my product affordable. One really cool affordable thing that has been really popular throughout the years is my spicy gift packs. These are $12 and they're loaded with flavor. They're all different. Like this one's meant for grilling. It's sweet corn rub, roasted garlic dust, and barbecue rub. This is the garlic lover. It's 3 different kinds of dried garlic, which is kind of a revelation for most home cooks who've never cooked with real garlic powder before. To experience 3 different kinds of it is
of course, issues like shelf life are not as critical if we use this fast enough, so it doesn't matter. But you don't have additives for color stabilization or extending shelf life, but you don't need them in your products.
Yeah, I don't have additives, period, for any purpose. And the reason for that is something that I discovered early on when I started dehydrating, which is that, yeah, garlic powder that's real and pure is sticky and challenging to get into the jar. But once it's there and you keep that lid on tight, it'll keep for the same amount of time that a powder that's full of additives will keep for, which is 2 to 3 years. So that's part of why these come in small jars, is because I want you to have them and not have them go stale. Just, this little jar, it depends on how much you cook, how much you like garlic, for how much how quickly you'll get through it. But yeah, rotate your spices every 2 to 3 years, and you can be sure that even if they have no preservatives, they're still fresh. They're still just as garlicky, just as tasty as the day you bought it. This is one last gift pack that I have to mention because it's my personal favorite and something I'm really proud of that I haven't even mentioned yet, which is the garlic dust trio. Let's see. So you've got roasted garlic dust, which is caramelized, slow roasted garlic. It's kind of sweet and mellow, super garlicky still. You've got black garlic dust, which is actually roasted garlic to the nth degree. This is garlic that was cooked for 30 days straight at a really low temperature, and it actually completely caramelizes the clove, completely changes the texture so that it's almost like dried fruit, and brings out all of the natural sugars. And there are a lot of natural sugars in garlic. It's very sticky, as you know, when you slice into it. And so this one is by far the most nuanced, complex flavor, very umami, almost reminiscent of balsamic or molasses. And then this raw garlic dust on top, by contrast, is intensely garlicky, just like you bit into a freshly sliced clove. And so the combination of these 3 just illustrates all the nuance of flavor that you can get from garlic. You don't have to settle for granular, generic garlic powder that kind of is sort of reminds you of the flavor of fresh garlic. You can just, a pinch of these is like using a whole clove, and you can experience all the different ways of cooking it that transform the flavor. When I first started, I was doing a lot of farmers markets. A few times a week, I was going out and doing markets myself, and I did that for a number of years, and then branched out into larger festivals. At this point in my business, I'm really just doing a handful of big festivals, and I haven't done farmers markets in quite a while, primarily because I'm trying really hard at this point in this stage to grow my online following and online sales, as well as wholesale, because it's one of my main goals for my business is to have this available in a lot of different little specialty food shops throughout the Northeast.
And what's your webpage?
Rockerboxspiceco.com.
How do things go during COVID for you?
Oh, COVID was a challenge. So you'll hear from any small business owner. I relied heavily on events in the years leading up to COVID. So the absence of all of the garlic festivals and holiday events was really hard. But it gave me the opportunity to grow my online following and really dive into social media, which is something I'm always learning more about. And I love interacting with my customers there. I've really missed talking to and interfacing with them one-on-one at the events. And I'm planning to get back into events this coming fall. But so yeah, COVID presented me with that challenge, but and a number of different supply challenges too, just in things that, you know, you wouldn't think would have been impacted, like finding glass pint jars, simple things like that, or the co-packer that helps me make the pickled garlic in Kingston, you know, running into problems, people getting sick and having to shut down for periods of time, which impacted scheduling and product availability. But my customers have been incredibly understanding with the ups and downs of stock levels, and as of right now, everything is in stock.
That's great, and it feels good to be, as we're coming out of COVID, we hope to be moving in that positive direction. So you're fully in stock, you've got everything in the right jars and with the right labels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a relief to be on the upswing there.
And you said you design your own labels and you do your own publicity and graphics. You're a one-person shop.
I do. I actually have a side interest in graphic design. It's been something I've always taken an interest in. And so, you know, the very first thing I ever did when I was starting Rockerbox was to design this logo. And it hasn't changed since day one. And I do all my own packaging, labeling, and the labeling of the jars has evolved a lot throughout the years. But I also do graphic design work on the side for other small business owners that are just getting started. And that's been kind of a side hustle for me this past year, which I've really enjoyed. And I do all my own artwork for social media as well. And really enjoy getting creative with that and having the opportunity to do design work for my business.
Typically your own photography as well.
I do. Yeah, I still do all my own product photography. Here and there, I've gotten lucky where a photographer will find me at an event or something. But overall, when you go on my website, I took all those photos. And that's I had a learning curve with it too. But I've taken some courses and gotten a little better at it. If you look at my really old photos on my Instagram, you'll see the evolution there. I'm learning as I go.
As we all are. And what are your future plans?
Well, I've always aspired to continue to have Rockerbox be a one-woman show. I really like running my business and by myself and being able to make all the decisions. And so I aspire to continue my partnerships with the people who help me make the physical product and to get into more stores so that it's available to more people throughout my area and ideally throughout the country. And I'll just keep growing organically and learning as I go. Thanks everyone for watching.
As Raema describes on the business webpage, www.rockerboxspiceco.com, Rockerbox is named after one of the implements used by miners to separate gold from ore-bearing sand and gravel deposits. Rockerbox Spice Co's allium dusts are Raema's gold. She hopes you'll find an opportunity to add some to your spice shelf and culinary experiences. Thank you once again to Raema Rotindo of Rockerbox Spice Co. in Schoharie, New York, for enthusiastically sharing the Rockerbox Spice Co. story through this Zoom-based interview. A selection of Raema's line of single-ingredient, raw, roasted, and fermented allium products is available at the Western New York Welcome Center's Taste New York Market, in addition to a number of other Taste New York markets and a growing list of gift and specialty shops throughout the Northeast. You may also, once again, find Raema selling and promoting her products at regional festivals as we continue to emerge and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Rockerbox Spice Co. is another example of how small businesses in New York State are continually adjusting to changes in the economy and markets, and is one of the many businesses working to make locally grown, manufactured, or processed and packaged foods, beverages, goods, and services available to consumers throughout the state, region, and beyond.